Hello and welcome to the series premiere of Frontlines of Social Good, part of the Philanthropy Mastermind series. I'm Jay Frost. This program was created to bring you into direct conversation with the people working at the intersection of crisis, community, and change, leaders navigating uncertainty, responding in real time, and helping us to understand what's happening in the world and what it means for civil society and philanthropy. Today, we are honored to be joined by three remarkable leaders. First, we'll be joined by Eugenia Mazarenko, Eugenia Mazarenko and Anna Nishniadze, joining us from, respectively, Providence, Rhode Island, and Kyiv, Ukraine. They are the co-founders of Philanthropy in Ukraine, an organization helping strengthen Ukraine's philanthropic and nonprofit infrastructure during wartime. Later in the program, we'll speak with Shannon Watson, Executive Director of Majority in the Middle, joining us from Minneapolis, where she is working to strengthen civic dialogue and democratic engagement during a time of deep division. Before we begin those conversations, let's take a look at some of the philanthropic gifts making news and the major news stories affecting the nonprofit sector right now. We'll begin, as we have since the inception of this program, with the top 5 gifts, but this time the top 5 gifts of 2026 to date. They are in reverse order. Number 5. The National Council for Mental Well-Being has received a $32 million gift from Mackenzie Scott, supporting its work strengthening mental health services and supporting thousands of nonprofit mental health providers nationwide. Number 4. The Trevor Project, the leading suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization for LGBTQ+ youth in the U.S., received a $45 million gift from Mackenzie Scott, the largest gift in the organization's history, supporting expanded crisis services and long-term sustainability. Number 3, Northwestern Medicine's Bloom Cardiovascular Institute received a $50 million gift from Neil G. Bloom and the Bloom Family Foundation, supporting cardiovascular research, innovation, and patient care. Number 2, the University of California Davis School of Veterinary Medicine received a historic $120 million gift from Joan and Sanford Weil, supporting construction of a new veterinary medical center, expanded research, and workforce development. And number 1, since the start of 2026, Cornell University's College of Engineering received a transformational $371.5 million gift from David and Cheryl Duffield, the largest gift in Cornell's history, expanding engineering education, research, and innovation. Now, here are a few of the top news stories shaping the nonprofit sector. According to the Association of Fundraising Professionals, the Office of Personnel Management plans to decommission the Combined Federal Campaign's online charity portal on March 4th, even though the most recent giving cycle is still being finalized. AFP warned that shutting down the portal prematurely could disrupt access to donor information, reporting, and fund distribution for thousands of participating nonprofit organizations. The Combined Federal Campaign has raised billions of dollars for charities since the founding of it in 1961 and remains one of the largest workplace giving programs in the world. According to the National Council of Nonprofits, a presidential directive known as NSPM 7, focused on countering domestic terrorism, expands federal authority to investigate organizations suspected of supporting terrorism. Nonprofit leaders have warned that the policy could create uncertainty for advocacy organizations and nonprofits engaged in lawful public policy work. Turning to the pages of the Chronicle of Philanthropy, they report that Candid, the organization formed by the merger of GuideStar and the Foundation Center, recently laid off 42 employees, about 1/5 of their workforce, as they shift their strategy toward providing structured data for artificial intelligence platforms. Candid maintains one of the world's largest databases of nonprofit organizations and philanthropic giving, and its restructuring reflects the growing importance of AI in fundraising and donor intelligence. Fortune magazine reports, citing the Associated Press as well, that 35 of America's wealthiest donor families recently committed more than $1.03 billion through the Audacious Project, a collaborative philanthropic initiative housed at TED. The project pool donations to fund nonprofit organizations working on global challenges, including public health, economic mobility, and climate change. According to new research published by the Conference Board and reported by the Harvard Law School Forum on Corporate Governance, corporate giving budgets are largely stable now, but priorities are shifting. More than half of corporate citizenship leaders surveyed, or 52%, expect to increase employee volunteering programs, while more companies anticipate reducing direct cash grants than increasing them. The report also found that only 15% of corporate citizenship leaders believe their nonprofit partners are financially stable. Globally, philanthropy continues to play a direct humanitarian role. According to the Times of India, Dubai-based philanthropist Feroz Merchant has helped secure the release of more than 20,000 prisoners since 2008 by paying debts owed by individuals jailed for financial insolvency, including hundreds already released this year during Ramadan. In a separate report in the same paper, they report that an anonymous philanthropist recently donated 35 million UAE, or about $9.5 million, to a campaign fighting hunger, part of a broader initiative aiming to raise the equivalent of approximately 272 million US dollars and reach millions of children affected by malnutrition. The sector is also marking this week the passing of two significant philanthropists whose giving shaped major institutions. According to the Brooklyn Eagle, citing Art News, philanthropist Iris Cantor died at age 95. Cantor was one of the leading supporters of arts and culture institutions in the U.S. Through the Iris and B. Gerald Cantor Foundation, she and her late husband donated hundreds of millions of dollars to museums, universities, and medical research, including major gifts to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Stanford University, and the Brooklyn Museum. And according to the Palm Springs Post, philanthropist John McDonald has passed away at age 93. McDonald and his husband, Bob Wright, donated the building that became the permanent home of the LGBTQ Center of the Desert, helping establish critical infrastructure for services supporting the community across Southern California. Nowhere are the stakes for civil society clearer than perhaps in Ukraine. This week marks another anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion, which began on February 24, 2022. Since then, millions of Ukrainians have been displaced, and nonprofit organizations have played a central role in delivering humanitarian assistance, supporting refugees, and sustaining communities during wartime. Our guests today are part of that effort. Eugenia Mazarenko and Anna Nishnyanidze are the co-founders of Philanthropy in Ukraine, an organization working to strengthen Ukraine's philanthropic ecosystem and nonprofit infrastructure. Anna joined us from Kyiv, and Eugenia from Providence, Rhode Island. Here is that conversation. Thank you both very much for making an appearance here on the show. It is a pleasure to see both of you. Of course, you're in two separate locations. Maybe we can begin there. So, Eugenia, you're in, where are you right now?
I'm in Providence,
You're in Providence.
Rhode Island. Yeah.
Okay. And Anna, you are in Kyiv, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm in Kyiv. I'm based in Kyiv.
And I know we're going to talk about Philanthropy in Ukraine, the organization, but it might be helpful to first by just getting an idea about the landscape for philanthropy in Ukraine, the country, as well as the environment today. I think that as we air this, it is 3 years and a day since the invasion. So let me just ask the broader question. How are you both feeling today? Anna?
It is a very difficult question about the feeling because in general I'm fine, but of course it is very surrealistic when you are in modern city in the middle of a European continent and you live inside the war. You can see and live when missiles are bombing your city, and I can't even describe it. Maybe some authors will describe it better than me, but of course it's very stressful, but life is going on, and unfortunately, we will not have another life, another opportunity to live this life, and that's why we should be strong and create, develop, and be happy when we can be happy.
And Eugenia, I know that you're here in the States right now, but of course you're personally and professionally connected to this work every day. How is it for you being here at a moment like this?
Thank you. I would say it's a little bit dangerous, to be in the US. Unfortunately, I need to admit this because I came to US a year and a half ago. So I also from Kiev, but before the war, I used to live in Bucha, and the city was occupied by Russians, and my house and everything I built there was destroyed. So I was running an organization in Ukraine, but at the same time, I am a mom, so I made a decision a year ago that I need to go because my child was suffering. She's 7 years old, and now she's in Rhode Island, and she's a part of community, and it's made me feel okay, you know. So I'm okay right now. Thank you.
And of course, when you have a major conflict like this, and there really hasn't been one quite like this for many years, especially in Europe, it has an influence on all things, including the third sector, the independent sector, the nonprofit world, whatever you want to call it. That's what you both are steeped in. Let's describe that sector a bit for people who just don't know Ukraine at all. What is it like, the nonprofit sector and philanthropy, generally speaking, maybe even prior to the conflict as well as today? Do
Yeah.
you want to start with that?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. Individual sector in Ukraine quite young, but it's very important to understand the history of Ukraine. So as philanthropy sector exists in US, something closer to this was in Ukraine during 600 years till 20th century before USSR occupied Ukraine. And when Ukraine was occupied by USSR for 70 years, being a citizen of USSR, you could not have your private property. You rely only on your government and all these humanitarian issues, health issues just covered by government. And it's very important to understand that we have a generation of our parents, our grandparents who still live with this mindset. And revolution of dignity, I would say, broke up this, structure within our own minds. And we started to see people behind organizations, not just institutions without people, but people started to take responsibilities and build amazing institutions. And now we see very proactive civil society in Ukraine. And full-scale invasion brought us as Ukrainians to the stage that we feel our subjectivity. This is our country, and we are fighting for our country. We are building our country in other stages. So I can say that because of the full-scale invasion, we don't need to say Ukrainians that you need to donate to this topic or this topic, and Ukrainians, they donate not only to kids who are suffering from cancer, like fighting with the cancer, but they support army because almost all somebody from our family definitely on hostilities right now, and we support not by buying weapons. We are not allowed to buy it, unfortunately, but we support people like some medical stuff, buying cars, buying other equipment. So my main message is that currently, NGO sector in Ukraine, not just growing, it's accelerating. We can observe a lot of new organizations, especially in 2022, when we saw the world solidarity with Ukraine. At that time, Anya and I, we were a part of the team of the Gori Foundation. And because this foundation is well known on an international level within philanthropies, we started to receive a request. Can you give us 5 organizations dealing with the kids, like Assistant of Oprah, Assistant of Madonna? So they somehow found our contacts. Like, we know how they found, yeah, because this organization was member of many membership organizations. But at that time, we just started to match, because the Gori Foundation is a grant maker who provides grants to local organizations. And this foundation has a database of local organizations in Ukraine. And it was just a right, function of this foundation to match international donors and local organization. And then Anya, Luba, and I, we started to think how to organize this system, but without us, let's say judges. You're a good organization, you are not. We can, offer you. So we started to think what we can do for our local organizations who do amazing job, because before humanitarian organization entered Ukraine, local organization did all the work, humanitarian work, evacuation of people. And we have very proactive civil society in Ukraine. So we started to think how to make them more visible, and not just mapping organization, but we need to break this bias that local organizations are not enough equipped, to be equal partners to international donors. So it's how we decided to establish philanthropy.
Maybe I can turn to Anna then for a little bit of what we might call color analysis in sports anyway, from the ground, working with these organizations. So when you are identifying organizations and then documenting them for potential support, how difficult is that to do right now, first of all, and then how do you go about doing it? And maybe can you give us an idea of the scope as well of how many organizations you've had a chance to document?
I can. Very good questions. So it's not only like assessing organization. Now, when we are talking about our idea, now it is actually ecosystem solution for non-profit sector. And maybe it will sound not very modest, but this solution can be change maker, not only in Ukraine, but also outside of Ukraine in different contexts. So our decision is that we created a web platform, actually a website. And this website offer to local Ukrainian organization to go through due diligence process, so to go through verification process. To make this methodology of verification, we did great job. We compared more than 20 due diligences. We consulted with donors, NGOs, organization inside Ukraine, outside Ukraine, with different partners to make this methodology of verification. And now everything is fully automatized. It is actually a website. Local organization can register, fill application form. This application form has 113 questions actually, and is absolutely comprehensive, cover all areas of work of CSOs. And for now, we have, 411 CSOs, Ukrainian CSOs, have completed verification, and 5 international grant makers use the platform. So they accept our methodology, and 13 million euros has been enabled through verified partnerships. So our methodology, our ecosystem help Ukrainian CSOs to grow, to have resources, to have partnerships.
Anna, I may ask you to do that again only because it's quite dark where you are. I don't know if you have sensed that.
Yeah, because I have no electricity in Kyiv.
Wow,
Yeah,
it wasn't as dark before, but it's gotten very dark now.
Yeah, because I live in Kyiv, and unfortunately we have electricity for 3 hours per day, and I can't control it.
Right, of course. So, Eugenia, we just had a description about what this is like and the scope of it. How does that compare to the sector as a whole? I mean, you've got a lot of generosity going on in Ukraine today. How does the database? What portion of the sector does it really reflect?
I can answer this question. Yeah, I can answer this question. Now so in general, we have a lot of registered CSOs, more than 100,000. We have registered CSOs, but not every CSO is active. If we are talking about researchers for 2025, we have about 12,000 CSOs active in Ukraine. And in our database, we have 2,000 organizations now registered. Not verified, but registered. So we can say that we cover them. So if, to sum up, we cover every 10 active CSO in Ukraine.
Okay. That does give me an idea about the scope. And in terms of the impact, does that also reflect kind of the breadth of the sector? Because Eugenia, you were talking about this earlier. There are kids with cancer that are being addressed by these organizations, but it's also maybe transportation needs, food. I mean, there are a lot of different needs in Ukraine. So does what you've been able to compile so far reflect kind of the breadth of the sector, if not the total number of organizations?
It's very important that those who can find those who can implement, and they can find exactly the topic they would like to support. So at our platform, we have the whole diversity. So by using criteria, so how the platform works itself, we are not assessing like organization by ourselves. We have independent expert who assess this organization in a platform, and the platform itself, it's a very difficult structure because we think about cybersecurity topic, because organization sharing with us data, and we need to protect this data. So when donors come to Ukraine, they also have due diligences. And many of local organizations just afraid to go through it. So we want local organizations to be prepared and go through due diligence in a safe space where they can communicate with this expert who verify them. And after verification, independent expert give them a roadmap, what done well, what not. So it's a report which show local organization what to do to build your capacity. And then we have a catalog of verified organization on our website. So if you would like to support somebody who is dealing with the evacuation, just go to our website, and using criteria, you will find your organization dealing with this topic.
We talked earlier about local organizations. Can you give us a little bit of insight into why it's important to seek out local organizations instead of just the global NGOs that might be working in places like Ukraine? What is the expertise that local organizations bring that's important to support?
So there are a lot of arguments why you should support local organizations. So first of all, there is great research, international research. It calls economic of localization, passing the buck, economics of localization. This research is about localization processes in Ukraine. And this research shows us that workflow and work of local CSOs is 15% more cost effective than work of international organizations, because salaries, because context, and because everything. So first argument, it's like money argument. It is more cost effective. Second one, we here know better what we need. I really like this motto of localization, trend of localization in Ukraine, nothing about us without us. We can do it faster, we can do it cheaper, and we are here. We can make evacuation right now, we can rebuild something right now, and of course, work of international organization is very important. But we are citizens of this country, and our people are ready to risk their lives, for example, to evacuate or to deliver some aid, for example, near the front line. And no one will do it better than us. That's why I really ask to find the local organizations or local organization and support this organization directly.
I'm trying to imagine what it might be like for the two of you going through this experience of building this organization to make it possible for people from the outside to support the work of local organizations. What has been the biggest surprise for each of you in going through this journey?
I'm freezed. I see my picture and I'm freezed right now. Something with my internet connection.
We will do some magic in editing. There you are. You're back. Yes.
Surprises? You mean building capacity of organization, or surprises?
Any of this work? As you've built this out and done this work and brought attention to these organizations, what has surprised you the most?
I would say the big challenge, not even surprise, the challenge is that this product is the let me paraphrase this in the right way. So the value of the product, we understand the value of the product. We understand what impact it will have. But sector, our primary client, not usually understand why I need to go through this due diligence if at the end of this tunnel, I don't see the money itself. So this theory of change that we are trying to deliver, that this is the complex that we need to proceed to be equal partners with the international donors and build our capacity. It's important. We need to do this job. And this is, I think, the big challenge. The surprise, how it's difficult to fundraise, such field tech things, because you can't compete with when there are a lot of urgency things, especially now when it's a humanitarian crisis in Ukraine because of the electricity, because of the heating process. Russia destroy our heating stations every day. And for example, Anya right now has internet because of using EcoFlow, but she doesn't have the light because of the internet. She needs to choose. Um, and it's difficult to compete, because we see the cut of USAID funding. And now many international donors leave in Ukraine because of the new priorities in the world. And so we still have war in Ukraine, still have many problems, and people talking about recovery, but we are not, and recovery and rebuilding, we are not at this stage yet.
Yeah, completely agree. And as for me, so three things about like philanthropy in Ukraine, like organizational part. It's not like, okay, the biggest surprise was that how important it is that we made this decision to establish philanthropy in Ukraine as co-founders. This co-leadership, this opportunity to share risks, to share responsibilities, to share, I don't know how to say it, even like mood. When I am in the bad mood, I can share with Zhenya or Luba, our third co-founder, and this co-leadership is extremely helpful and big surprise for me. And second surprise about nonprofit sector in general, level of bravery and sometimes even level of craziness is enormous because due to last research, 85% of professionals from nonprofit sector don't receive salaries because they prioritize all these grants, all funds they receive, and send everything to the needs of beneficiaries. It is second surprise. And third surprise about so during our work, very important for us is advocacy on international level. So we are advocating, please accept our methodology. Our methodology is perfect. You can rely on it, and level of trust among international partners is very, very low. So trust to local decisions, local innovations is low. So, and I think that it's very sad and surprise for me.
In the midst of all these challenges, something is keeping both of you going. And I know that you need to do what you do, and you're committed to it. But what do you imagine? What is the goal that you can imagine that keeps you going on this project every day?
I think for me, it is feedback we receive from local organizations. When local organizations send us like message, like thank you philanthropy in Ukraine, because we received funding for this year for the first time, and I can cover salaries of my team. So like big idea is to support Ukrainian nonprofit sector, and like in the future, I would like to see nonprofit sector not in the mood of sprint of trying to survive, but to see Ukrainian nonprofit sector come with resources, with knowledge, with trust.
Also, our team, I would like to highlight it. We are Ukrainian a local organization, and being honest, we can compete with and provide salaries the same as an international organization can provide. And however, we have a team, amazing team, who drive this platform. And they not only drive it, but they believe, they understand the goals and the impact of it. And it's impressive.
Maybe just as a last question, how can people learn more about the organization but also support the work?
So you can go on our website, philanthropyinukraine.org, and you can know more about philanthropy in Ukraine. We have LinkedIn as well on in English, LinkedIn page, and on our website you can find link how to support philanthropy in Ukraine, and as well we have campaign on global giving for US citizen. It will be I think the most convenient to go on global giving and support us and our work through global giving.
Thank you both very much. Our thanks again to Eugenia and Anna for that conversation and for the work that they and their colleagues are doing to sustain civil society in Ukraine under extraordinary circumstances. Once again, yesterday, the anniversary of that invasion. Their story reminds us that civil society is often tested, most severely in moments of disruption, when institutions are under strain and communities have to rely on one another in new and urgent ways. And while the scale and nature of those challenges may differ, civil society here in the U.S. is also navigating a moment of profound tension and uncertainty. Since the end of our season last year, we've seen, of course, major events in Minneapolis and across the country. In Minneapolis specifically, nonprofit leaders and foundations have been responding to recent federal law enforcement actions. According to the McKnight Foundation, foundation leaders in Minnesota have warned that recent events, including the fatal shooting of residents by federal agents and arrests of protesters, have raised serious concerns about civil liberties, the use of force, and the role of philanthropy in defending democratic norms. Tanya Allen, president of the McKnight Foundation, wrote in the Chronicle Philanthropy that foundations across Minnesota have heard from, quote, hundreds of colleagues from across the country asking about the situation here and seeking guidance on how philanthropy should respond when civil society itself is under strain. At moments like this, nonprofits play a critical role not only in delivering services, but helping communities make sense of what is happening and finding constructive paths forward. Our next conversation is with someone deeply engaged in that work. Shannon Watson is the founder and executive director of Majority in the Middle, an organization working to strengthen civic dialogue and democratic engagement in Minneapolis and beyond. Here is our conversation. So Shannon, thank you very much for spending some time together today, and it's a pleasure to see you again.
Absolutely, Jay. Good to see you as well.
I have some questions that are kind of broad to begin with. You're right there in Minneapolis. You live and you work there. You're talking to neighbors, partners, community members. What does it feel like beneath the headlines to be in Minneapolis?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think it differs from person to person and day to day. I think that's one of the most challenging things about living in a community that is having, different action enforcements in different places because for the most part, where I live in the city, and like the orientation of my apartment building and where my office is, I don't see a lot of the ICE actions going on. That being said, if I lived where I lived a year ago, I would see them every day. And so I can understand how some people feel less connected to what's going on, and some people feel completely under siege. And so just remembering that my own experience is not everyone's experience, I think is important when we talk about, how it's going and all those things.
Well, does it feel though, even for you, set aside as you physically are,
Mm-hmm.
does it feel different in Minneapolis today from what it felt like maybe 5 years ago, or whenever you started this work?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because Majority in the Middle started in September of 2020, so we were full on in COVID. The murder of George Floyd had just happened, so a lot of sort of Minneapolis progress has happened. I mean, in Minneapolis, it's before George Floyd or after George Floyd's murder,
Okay.
and so that's actually one of the things that's been really disheartening from the law enforcement standpoint because have been for the last several years, and particularly with Chief O'Hara coming in, they have been doing an enormous amount of work, both in the culture of the police department and law enforcement in general, and then building those relationships with community. And so one of the things that was really hard early this year was for people for whom law enforcement was not usually an ally, feeling like, okay, wait, we need to trust our local law enforcement and we need to, let that be okay because in sometimes they are the protection from federal law enforcement. And so that has been a growth piece all along. The ICE situation has kind of heightened that and sort of sped it up, maybe is a good way to talk about it. But I mean, in general, Minnesota's a good place to live. I am a Minnesotan by choice. I live here because of really high civic engagement, and that's everything from, being the #1 voter turnout state in the country most of the time. Sometimes, we battle with that from Wisconsin. But a lot of times Minnesotans have really high voter turnout. We have high rates of volunteerism, high personal philanthropy. And so those are things that actually have really helped in the current moment because people are enormously networked here.
Talk about your work across the political spectrum. I think that'll be helpful for people to understand also how you're viewing things that are happening there across time. Give us a little introduction to the work of the organization and your perspective on that breadth of political opinion in Minneapolis and beyond.
So Majority in the Middle is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit organization. I do a lot of time educating people about the difference between a C3 and a C4. We are C3, so we don't get involved in political campaigns. We do advocacy in general. And then a choice that our board made several years ago was not to do any lobbying, which I will tell you, like I'd been a lobbyist for 10 years when we made that decision. And I was initially kind of stumped, like, how am I going to have any influence if I can't lobby? Because there's rules around lobbying. And so, I mean, we figured it out. We do a lot of work and, general advocacy and lots of sort of thought leadership. Some people don't really like that term, but articulating the nuance is something that we lean into, letting 12 things be okay at the same time, like just acknowledging that and having space for it and not having people feel like they need to justify or defend their position. And then we do a lot of work with elected officials of sort of all stripes. The legislature, obviously, those come with a partisan label. the nonpartisan offices, all nonpartisan offices in Minnesota, the local offices, so county commission, city councilor, mayor, school board, township board, those are all legally nonpartisan offices. And so we do quite a bit of work trying to keep those nonpartisan offices nonpartisan. That's a lot of relationship work with people who are in those roles. I will say, depending on where you are, like it may be legally nonpartisan, might not be functionally nonpartisan. Uh, and that's something important, because the more partisan those roles get, and the more that party endorsements come into play, those divisions get deeper. And so while we look at, our legislature and see like, okay, here's 6 things about the legislature that we don't like, that comes from sort of that inherent left versus right division. We want to make sure that those are not showing up in the local offices, because as a former mayor used to say, there is nothing partisan about potholes, or at least there shouldn't be. So that's where we do a lot of work.
And maybe a concrete example that might be something I know in our area, like school boards, where those elections are nonpartisan, but people will go to the local political parties for their endorsements. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah. And there, ever so often I'll talk about this and somebody will be like, well, why can't you just, pass a law that makes endorsements in nonpartisan offices, like make it so you those are illegal. California tried that in the 1980s, and it didn't work because it isn't constitutional. It infringes on the free speech of those particular associations. So we've been spending a lot of time. We haven't really quite figured this all out yet, but one of the reasons that people do get party endorsements is like there is an incentive for getting those. And so we try to see, like, is there a way to either counter those incentives or make them irrelevant, and or do a lot of education of the public to which elected officials should you see with party labels and which should you not, because a lot of, like a mayor that I work with quite a bit, he said when he went door knocking, when he was running for mayor, and people on the other side of the door would say, well, what party are you? And he would explain to them, well, it's a nonpartisan office, so like I keep my party out of it. And he said that a lot of times people didn't trust that answer, because they think if you're not saying, then you must be the other party than what I am. And that voters use party affiliation for shorthand. So part of what we can do as a third party, nonprofit educational organization, we can sort of highlight that for voters ahead of time. So, if your potential mayor comes and knocks on your door, if they don't have a party, that's okay, because that office doesn't have one. That's not how we elect mayors. And so sort of defend them a little bit ahead of time.
I know one of the issues with all this is not just who's wearing which color jersey, so to speak, but it's also about disagreement, distrust, polarization that may arise from things beyond the pure political party system. I know you've experienced that in trying to provide education. Talk about that a bit. Where does the distrust come from? And do you find that folks in Minnesota, generally in Minneapolis, have dealt with that pretty well? I mean, you're there working in this kind of work. Right. People seem to get along, at least it looks that way at a distance. What's the secret sauce for addressing distrust in a polarized environment?
Oh, great question. The short answer is relationships. There's a saying I like, it's hard to hate up close. And I think the flip side of that is it's hard to trust from far away. So the more you know a person, the less sort of stereotype that they can inhabit in your brain. And that's the thing, like human beings, just as part of our evolution, we are kind of genetically coded to form our in-groups and our out-groups. We just naturally do that. Part of the reason that we're divided is just because we're human. It's not because we're all terrible people and we're mean and we're evil. It's just because we're human. And so since we do that, we look for things and people who are like us, and we group together with them. And we we are a little more affectionate than we should be with the people who are in our in-group, and we are a little more distrustful of those who are in the out-group. And so just knowing that, I think, is enormously helpful in dealing with it, because like you can sort of self-diagnose, like, oh, okay, that person is on, the other side of the aisle. So I'm naturally going to be distrustful of that person. So I have to work kind of against that natural instinct. So I think the challenge of as we have become more polarized, that is both in our usage of social media, the ways we consume information, and then the stereotypes that we have between different people. So the more that you know somebody who would otherwise be an other, the more that you can sort of stop checking those stereotypical boxes. So if you believe that person who belongs to the orange party, that's a terrible thing. I tried to use orange because it wasn't red or blue. Let me go back. So if you have somebody who belongs to the, let's say, teal party, like if we have a teal, I'm trying to stay away from red and blue. So let's say teal party. If you have somebody who's a member of that, and you assume that they think the same as all of the other members in the teal party, then that's easy to do if you don't have a relationship. But if you have a relationship with that person, you could find out why they consider themselves a member of the teal party, but maybe they don't agree with 100% of the people who are also on that side. And so I think one of the reasons that one of the reasons that we do this work in Minnesota, and one of the places it's really good for, our legislative majorities flip a lot. Sometimes Republicans are in charge, sometimes Democrats are in charge. Right now, our House of Representatives is actually tied 67 to 67. It's only the second time in history that has happened. But that doesn't necessarily mean there's all kumbaya compromise all the time. But it does give us a good opportunity to look at systems that divide people and get in the way of that relationship building. Because I will say, like, the best way to get over distrust is to get to know somebody.
Right. Well, and you talked before about the role your organization is playing, especially in the educational arena, kind of letting people view this maybe more holistically, see that people can be part of a teal party or some other color party, and but still have some commonalities, that we are all in this together. But are there other roles that nonprofits play in moments like this, especially when you're under the pressure cooker of national exposure? And at least from a distance, it looks like also lots of federal intervention in daily life. What role can nonprofits play, and maybe what distinguishes them from government media when it comes to rebuilding trust?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that we did about a month ago was, and this is sort of terrible, but one of the things that really kind of brought sort of two sides together, because that's the thing, like, people in this country and people in this state, we don't necessarily agree on immigration policy yet. We don't agree on how immigration is enforced yet. One of the things that there is broad agreement about is our basic foundational constitutional rights. And when in the enforcement of some of that immigration policy, constitutional rights were being violated, that was really the opportunity for some unity of message, in that, I agree about this piece and you don't agree about that piece, but we absolutely agree on the constitutional rights. So there's a lot of pressure to make statements, and obviously statements don't, like, public statements, they're not great for nuance. And so we didn't necessarily even try to thread that needle. We just leaned into the Constitution. We try to find the things that people agree on and lean into that. So we had a great partner here, a company called 515 Productions, and we had people all over the state point their cell phones at themselves and hit the camera and read the preamble to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And Ian over at 515 put together a compilation video. And we very specifically, like, no analysis, no spin, no, like, here's what we're talking about. It was just the words. And I will say, like, I do a lot of projects that seem awesome in my head, and then they almost never turn out as awesome as they were in my head. But this one was one piece that it really, like, it made me a little teary, honestly. It was very emotional to hear words that were written, by then, new United States Americans 230 years ago, and how they still apply and they still resonate now. So
we are coming up on is it the sesquicentennial? I'm trying to remember the
something like, I can't say it. But yeah, so like the Declaration, the
right.
250th anniversary is coming up. The Constitution came a couple years after that. And then this is something I had either forgotten from civics or I have just learned it. But the Bill of Rights came out of the process of having the Constitution ratified by the individual states. And these were the things that they were like, okay, here's a Constitution. I mean, our Constitution, like, the preamble is awesome. And then a lot of it is like, it's like org chart. It's the creation of the structure of the thing. And then the Bill of Rights was really how the founders wanted, like, those guys didn't trust each other, which I think is fascinating. It's not just that they were really smart and they knew that, to have a system where there's not too much power vested in one person, you had to have these checks and balances. And part of it was theoretical, but part of it was they didn't trust the other people in the room. And they knew that the first people to hold all these offices were going to be in that room. So like, you don't have to trust each other. And the Bill of Rights came out of well, what about this? And what about this? And we need protections for this. And so I thought that was fantastic, that all of those things still resonate and are really, like, it went well with our mission to identify those things and lean into good government. And I think other nonprofits can do that as well. If part of the way you approach your work is doing it in a way that brings people together, that speaks to people on both sides. I do some training on how to make your advocacy bipartisan. And the first step to that is articulating why you should. Because there are a lot of organizations that, they're like, well, it's a really polarized space, so we're going to pick a side and we're just going to go with our agenda and see if we can get it through. And that is absolutely a strategy. And if your donors and your board and your constituents, agree with that structure, that's great. I myself prefer when organizations can do two things at one time: do your advocacy, and then also find ways to bring people together. And that could be across divides. That could be urban, rural. That could be Democrat, Republican. That could be, youth and older people. Just find the divides and make your advocacy relevant to a couple of different audiences. I mean, that helps in multiple ways.
As you go about the work, even though it's very inclusive. I mean, if you're doing things that are nonpartisan, by definition, they are for all people. It is still a challenge to raise money. It's not like you're getting government funding. So when you think about that, for your organization and for others around the country who are trying to find ways of bringing people together, maybe absent any form of governmental support, what is it that you think is the argument or the most persuasive kind of argument for supporting that work?
The one I lean into is that division is already very well funded in this country. Part of the reason that we have so much division is that it's really well funded. And I think the philanthropy community has started to realize this in the last several years, that as we are funding advocacy and outreach and community building. Again, sort of because we're human and because we divide and we look for in groups and out groups. If you do not intentionally do that work with a bringing people together lens, then you're not going to do it. And sometimes identifying other people, other groups, as kind of the enemy, and what you're fighting for. Excuse me. When part of your thing is describing why you need to fight for your advocacy, your program, whatever, that does set up inherent conflict, and those messages matter and they resonate. And when funders lean into that, whatever is rewarded will be repeated. And so I think we've gone down the path of, okay, that over there that's a problem. We need to fight that. Please give us money. I will tell you, the funding for truly nonpartisan organizations, it is actually much more difficult because of, again, this human thing. People think, oh, okay, well, if you're not on my team, you must be on the other team. And so saying I'm not on anybody's team, like, that's legitimate. I used to say I'm not on anybody's team. Now I say I'm on everybody's team.
So what's giving you the most hope right now? Not only broadly on these issues, finding support for the work you do, but specifically in a place like Minneapolis, which has really been under a lot of pressure. It continues to be under a lot of pressure. What's giving you the energy and the hope to continue the work?
I am an optimistic person by nature and sort of by choice, because I do believe that hope is a strategy. Getting to the point where all you want to do is sit on the couch and cry, that is a choice. It's not super productive. So, not to say that people don't need an occasion to sit on the couch and cry sometimes, but for me, the doing is in what's hopeful. And every time I write an op-ed or send a newsletter or talk to somebody or do a presentation, and I have somebody reply back that, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed to hear, or I had no idea your group existed. This is so great. Or like, I am in the middle and I have felt very lonely. So like, I found my people. That is kind of what keeps me going. In Minneapolis specifically, even amongst people who are very much in support of or in opposition of ICE, because there are both, they still are sort of focused on the people right in front of them. It's not always theoretical. A lot of times we're talking about neighbors, and that has a tendency to change people's perspective and their tactics in a way that's really humanizing and I think helpful.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you.
Absolutely.
My thanks again to Shannon Watson, a majority in the middle. Coming up next in the Philanthropy Mastermind series on the PM podcast, I spoke with Trey Devey, president of the Interlochen Center for the Arts, about leadership, resilience, and guiding an historic arts institution through change. You can catch that wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And on Wednesday, March 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern, John Lepp of Agents of Good will join us live for our How to Raise show. That's CFRE accredited, and you'll learn how behavioral science is transforming fundraising and how small changes can dramatically improve donor engagement and results. You can find out about all of these programs and everything to come on the website of our sponsor, DonorSearch, now a part of EverTrue, at DonorSearch.net. I'm Jay Frost. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time.